Putting the Ops in DevOps with Greg Duncan.
The Azure DevOps podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Hello, I'm your host, Jeffrey Palermo. You can go to www.azuredevops.show for past episodes and show notes. And I'm really excited today. Our guest is Greg Duncan. He's been developing eDiscovery software applications since his days at the now defunct Arthur Andersen. But Greg continues to develop eDiscovery applications for the next over the next 10 years during his tenure at KPMG, a time of continuous change and innovation in the world of eDiscovery and information governance. As a Microsoft Visual Studio and .NET MVP and a certified Scrum Master, Greg has been blogging and podcasting substantive technology information for many years. His dedication to research in tandem with his vast experience brings forth relevant and useful information that can be applied to all aspects of legal technology. And you may recognize him as a host on Radio TFS. Greg, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Good, Jeffrey. How are you?
I'm great. Oh, we ran into each other at the Build conference just a couple weeks ago. That was a great time.
Yeah, it was. And I got to tell you a little story. I got your book.
Awesome.
And you did the cool signing on it. And I brought it back all excited to show all my peers here and say, hey, you guys know who Jeffrey Palermo is, right? Crickets. I'm like looking at him like they're idiots. I mean, seriously, you've not heard of Party with Palermo? You've not heard, he's been podcasting for like a billion years. He's a speaker everywhere. And you've not heard it. And like my manager says, well, he sounds familiar. Like, oh, God, kill me now.
Oh, what baseball team does he play for again? I get that a lot.
But they were still suitably impressed by the signature or the inscription thing that you put on the book. So,
well, thanks for reminding me, because I have an offer out. If anyone would like some free print copies of the book, if you're running a user group or a conference, or even speaking at a user group or a local conference, then just reach out and we'll drop ship you a couple of free books to give away to the attendees. And that book is .NET DevOps for Azure. So, Greg, for people who might not have listened to Radio TFS before or be familiar with you, you've been doing Microsoft platform technology for quite a while. But give us a rundown. How'd you kind of end up on this track, and what have been the high points along your journey?
Well, I'm a typical bootstrapper. No CS degree, nothing like that. I basically was in the Army out of high school, but I've always been a computer geek. My first program was on a Tiris 80 stored on a cassette tape, Dungeons and Dragons program, of course, character generator kind of thing. And was in the Army, got out, was working for a consumer electronic mail order company called DAC, D-A-K. And it was customer service. They had a Mini that we were using. From there, I went to tech support. And at tech support, we would have to write people's zip code and their last names and a brief summary of what they were doing on a sheet of paper. And then somebody would have to take all those sheets and collate them and try to figure out statistics for that. I said, well, this is kind of stupid. And at the time we were shipping a 386 with Windows 3.0. And there was a program from Borland called Object Vision. So this was like a kind of rad tool. You could do forms generation and store it in a database. So I took that and created this cool little program thing where people could type in the zip code and the last names, and they can easily combine that and research that, and we can get statistics off of that.
Okay.
But that was kind of slow. It was 4 megs of RAM. We upgraded all the machines to 8 megs of RAM, and boy, it was a lot faster, but it was still slow. Microsoft at the point came out with this cool new thing called Visual Basic 1.0.
Yeah.
We wrote it in that, and it was much faster using the Paradox engine. And we didn't have a LAN at the time. This was early days. Novell was just getting started. Lantastic was just getting started.
Sneakernet.
Yeah, and that's actually what it was. They would, at the end of the day, they would put a floppy in. They would run a batch file. We would copy the Paradox database over to that floppy, and then I took all these floppies, combined them into a single database, and then redistributed that database out to the users. So yeah, that was how I got started. And from there, I just got bit by the bug of programming. I love programming. God, I love programming.
It's fun.
Being able to take something intangible and create with it. That is the best thing. I love that more than like anything else. Except for my kids, and my wife. But and since then, I've been just riding the wave of technology. I've it's gotten harder, I got to tell you, as I've gotten older. It's just so many things you have to forget. The constant change on it. We had some.
Now try to remember the things that you've forgotten.
But I was telling some college interns that were here visiting us for the day, and it was just like, whatever you know now, you're not going to know it in 5 years. It's not going to matter in 5 years, the specific details of it. But it's the lessons that you learn that you will take with you.
Yeah.
Like, don't jump on the new shiny thing first, because that shiny thing could very well go away. And I'm speaking to anybody who's written any Silverlight applications or,
mm-hmm.
things like that.
Right. And the principles don't go away. Actually, I was talking with one team yesterday, and a client is in a big data center setup, and so they're really talking about network segmentations and okay, we've got our DMZ set up this way, and then okay, in Azure now there's tried and true things. How do we do that in Azure? And one of our engineers, came out and said, well, you don't do DMZ in Azure. I said, well, wait, hold on. Say it a different way. It is implemented in a different way. You don't have to explicitly you yourself do it. You get a lot more restrictive networking out of the box with Azure. It's still there. So you can't tell a client something that they spent a lot of effort configuring properly in their data center that you just don't do. Because that's not true, actually. It's just very different. You don't want to put all of your servers right out front with open ports to the internet. Heck no. So the principles stay the same. It's just how you do them is different. Right.
And it was even, like you're saying, the principles. When I was in the Army, I was in communications, frontline communications. So putting the FM radios in the Jeeps and everything, and troubleshooting those. They have the commanders having problems with it, eliminating the variables.
Mm-hmm.
You figured, okay, do it one thing at a time to figure out where the fault is. And I still use that today.
Yeah. So, what's the story about how Radio TFS got started?
Radio TFS, the actual start of it, I joined it episode 33 in December of 2011, and I took over the primary producing of it in, when did I start producing it? 2014?
Some time ago.
2013, some time ago, yeah. But it actually got started. It was Mickey Gousset and Paul Hacker.
Mm-hmm.
They just got together one time and they recorded this podcast and put it out. And Martin Woodward listened to it and said, "Oh my God, your audio sucks. This is horrible." He recut the audio, cleaned it all up, and sent it back to them. So episode 2, he was on the show, and
Yeah.
and Radio TFS is it's a labor of love. We don't do advertising. There's no sponsors on it. Everybody is doing it just because they like to geek out. We like to, we are passionate about ALM. We're passionate about DevOps, and we just kind of do it when we can. We try to do 2-week cadence, but we're kind of falling off of that this year.
It's a lot of work. Well, I know I didn't see Mickey or Paul at the build conference. Maybe we just missed him. But Martin Woodward, he's been a guest on this show. Mm-hmm. So he had a lot of. It was around the time where VSTS was rebranded and split up into the Azure DevOps suite. So, well, you've been putting a lot of effort into the ops side of DevOps, and a lot of thinking and a lot of guidance. And so there's got to be a problem around that's a common problem. What do you see with the ops side of DevOps across teams?
Here's my challenge. I'm an FTE, a full-time employee. I work with the same people all day. I'm not consulting. I'm not switching around. So I live with my solutions and I live with the problems. And I've been doing CI/CD. I've been doing TFS since 2005. I was one of the people who did the 26-page white paper to install it, and I've been doing TFS all since then. We migrated to Azure DevOps Services last year, and have been living there and loving it. And we've been doing continuous integration. They check in the code, they commit the code, we do the build on it. Okay, that's cool. And that's something we've been doing for forever. The deployment, somewhat newer, but we've been doing that for a couple of years as well. That we can do that scripted deployment, which makes it. When I first joined the company, our deployment strategy was right mouse click publish.
Yep.
Yeah, and that works for that first development server, but doesn't work for production systems across multiple domains and stages. Mm-hmm. So we did the continuous deployment, and that's great. That means anybody can kick off that deployment, and it will be the same every time. And that the same artifacts, the same code build that you ship to development, and then to QA, and then to staging, and then to the production environments. It's all the same artifacts. It's all the same build. And that's great, and that's cool on it. So you say, okay, well, that means we're doing, DevOps, right? And it's like, no, I'm on the dev side of the DevOps. Our organization is still typically siloed, dev and IT. And we have some DevOps guys, guy in dev, and we have a DevOps guys in IT. And that's not DevOps. And I'm having the hardest time, trying to get the message across. And this was something that a message that I talked about at Build. I interviewed Ed Thompson, and we talked about DevOps. And it's
yeah. So Ed Thompson works on the source control aspects of Azure DevOps Services, and he's been on a guest on the show. You might want to go back and look at those listeners.
Yeah. And it's trying to change that mindset. Unfortunately, it's one of those things like I was talking about earlier, that you have to forget these things. I mean, we've had siloed, segmented, areas of responsibility for forever. And that's just how you did it. Not long time ago, in many cases, dev and QA were totally separate.
Right.
And you'd have to throw it over the wall to the QA. Luckily, we broke that down here. So that I'm very fortunate that our QA is just part of the team. Mm-hmm. They're on the product teams, they're in the stand-ups, they're in the sprint plannings. They're just one part of the flow of how we do the development on it. There's no throwing stuff over the wall.
Right.
Unfortunately, IT though they're even on a separate floor here in the building. It's just a lot of segmentation. They're not part of our daily scrums. They're not part of the sprint plannings. It's just icky. But the other side too, that, okay, so, that's personal, that's culture, that's something that's hard to change on it. But the other side of DevOps, though, and Brian Keller told me this, and I loved it. What DevOps is, or can be defined as, is developing for operations.
I
Okay.
like that.
Yeah. So if you think about it that way, you sell it to the developers like that. It's like, when you're writing this code, you have to think about how it's going to be operated, how it's going to be monitored, what telemetry you're going to go. If you get the call at 3 a.m. because the app is down, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I think I can affect more change here, because that is on the quote unquote development side. Simple things like feature flags. That's not an IT thing on it. To implement the feature flags, that's a development thing. And that's part of the story of deploying off of main, in that, because our organization, we currently don't. We do feature branching off of main, but we don't do sprint and then feature branching. So that means our main in the middle of a sprint is not deployable to production. And that's icky. And another thing that you can change, you listening out there, if you're in that seat and you're nodding your head, yeah, that's what happens in my development too on it, you can make that change. The other side of the coin, though, is you have to, what's in it for them? You can't just be sitting up, jumping up and down and saying, we have to use feature flags. We have to be deployable off of main. We have to build in telemetry. That doesn't, they're going to look at you and nod their heads. And 6 months later, they're going to keep nodding their heads. And a year later, they're going to keep nodding their heads on it. Yeah, it has to be what is the benefit to development, to them, their daily lives? How does it make it easier for them? Sure, DevOps is delivering business value. Okay, that's great. But when you're in the trenches, you're not fighting for your country. You're fighting for the buddy next to you.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with DevOps on it. Yes, we're all in it for the business value. We're making a profit. We want our paychecks. We want the business to do well and stuff. But day to day, it's the guy sitting next to you in the cube farm,
right,
that you're working together with. So,
and when the system has a hiccup, then the customers or the users get upset. And then with a separated organization, the users get upset at the person that really can't fix the root cause, but can only Band-Aid it.
Exactly. And then it becomes the blame game, and it just gets ugly on it. So again, if you're listening and you have these kind of things, these kind of issues on it, pick something that you can truly show why it's good for the developer, how it makes their lives easier, how it gives them more time to write cool code.
The Azure DevOps podcast is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a software engineering firm and Microsoft Gold partner, empowering development teams to be their best. ClearMeasure equips developers with the DevOps tools, methods, and automation necessary to focus on building their applications, rather than wrestling with builds, deployments, or environments. Click clear-measure.com to see whether a DevOps implementation is for you.
Now, some organizations are combining and just saying, hey, you know what? Everybody's an engineer, and everybody's going to be on rotation if there's any off hours. But some people might say, but my management's not going to combine. So if they think that's out of their control, what might be in their control to do?
Depends on what side of that what box you are in. If you're in IT, here's the other thing too, is don't ignore the back channel communications. Don't ignore the relationships. You all know it. Anybody who's had a job for more than 3 days knows that it's not the organization chart that runs the organization. It's the back channels, the relationships that you have with the people. And if you cultivate those relationships, you can make things happen, even if they're not necessarily officially happening. But it's that relationship that you build with the DBAs, with the reporting people, with the business analysts, with the other people, that you can then affect change without creating change, if that makes any sense at all.
Without moving someone's cheese.
Exactly. And once you get that success, start with the little things. Start with Donovan Brown always says it. Start with the things that are the most painful. Get a win. And again, everybody, I'm singing to the choir, but once you get one win, you have much more credibility to work on the next win and the next win and the next win.
Mm-hmm.
Getting complacent is also something you want to kind of avoid. Once you got a lot, like here, we've got all the CI and CDs and unit testings, and we are running Sonar Cube, and we can release from a button and all that good kind of stuff. And then you kind of get complacent, and then you stop getting those wins.
Yeah.
And then they'll kind of forget, because it's just what happens every day, right? We got continuous deployment, and we can deploy, via this thing, and we've been doing it for 2 years now. It's hard to get excited about that win when it's something they've been doing every day for years.
Right.
So look at it from where you are sitting. Look at what is the big pain point. If you're in IT and you're getting called in the morning, you're getting ServiceNow tickets about an application that doesn't seem to be working right. Work with your relationships with development and try to figure out, okay, what can the development side do? What can your buddy in dev, what can they do to that application to make it easier for you to operate it? Maybe it's just a simple log file. Maybe it's using application insights so they can proactively look at the performance on it. Maybe it's just putting some special switches in so you can, as the IT guy, go and flip a flag to clean it up. But try to think about your problems, and not just within your, because IT guys are going to say, "Oh, I'll just write some PowerShell and we'll do it like this, and we'll work around it," and we won't communicate back to development on what you're doing. So they'll never get fixed. If you keep doing the workaround, the short-term fix, and never communicate back, never do the full circle. DevOps is a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And if you never circle back, well, then you'll be stuck in short-term fix hell for forever.
The third way of DevOps is continuous learning. And when people ask me, what is DevOps, there's these say nothing definitions that are out there, but I say it's the 3 ways: flow, feedback, and continuous learning. And because that makes sense to people. Hey, it's 3 things, and let's talk about each one. But the continuous learning is how are the users using it, and how is it doing as it's being used? And if you can't answer that question, then you know that, okay, well, maybe I've developed flow and I can flow changes out to production. Maybe I have feedback, I have testing and other things to catch problems along the way. But the third way, I don't even have it implemented even in a shallow way yet.
Yep, absolutely. And I just hate the thought of spending a whole bunch of time working on an application or a feature on an application, and then say, well, we're doing it because the product owner told us to do it. That's what they wanted. And then we put the feature in, and you never know if it's used or not. You never, there's not having that telemetry to figure out, hey, this was actually a good investment in our time. Then you're just kind of picking stuff out of the air,
mm-hmm.
And it's just, it seems like such a waste. And it's for the developer. Think about it. You're writing code. You want to know if it's getting used or not. You want to know what you spend a whole bunch of time working on this cool dashboard that does all these nifty things on it. And, you get, one feedback. Hey, that was pretty neat. And that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets used once when it was first rolled out and then never used again. I mean, how depressing is that?
I've noticed a lot of talk about data science out there, and I'm seeing a lot of advertisements for, hey, come to this college and get a degree in data science, and so I see a lot of talk around that, but that has a big intersection here, because in order to know if people are using it or if people are having trouble, or if they're, what if some user every day is like going back button and then try again, back button and try again. They never log a trouble ticket of any kind, but they're having trouble using the system. It's those same techniques around business intelligence or data analytics that would allow us to get that insight into what the system is doing and what the people relying on our system are doing.
Right.
Yeah, we have to log the right telemetry. And then we have to figure out how to query those answers back out.
Right. And though that I have to say that's going to be one of the things. I was reading an article from Greg Lowe, and it was, is AIOps just another meaningless acronym? And he countered that as no. Basically, it's how AI is going to help the IT or the operations or whomever focus on the truly important thing. Having an IT guy scan log files, that's silly.
Well, a computer can do those things so much faster.
Exactly.
And all the time. The computer doesn't get tired.
Exactly. So the value proposition that IT guy is teaching the computer what is important. So then they can go on and do other things. It's turning that the data into information, into knowledge, into wisdom.
The AI ops that has, and it can sound buzzwordy,
right?
But if you think about it, I mean, what if you were able to say, "Hey Alexa, what features were not used today?" or Cortana. Oh, did you? my Echo Spot just replied.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
We actually just got our first Alexa at Christmas, and I set it up for my wife. It took her a while to get used to it, but now she's definitely a convert, and we babysit one of her friend's kids, who she's in the 4th grade. And now she is cheating and using Alexa to do like spelling. Hey, Alexa, how do you spell hippopotamus?
Right. Well, basic things. When I started cooking with my kids, like pick each one, and now they're starting to argue, I want to help you cook. And so we'll cook and following the recipe, and invariably you have to, set some timers for the meat on the stove and for the potatoes in the oven, or maybe you have potatoes and asparagus in the oven at the same time. And it's awesome just to say, set asparagus timer for 11 minutes, set potato timer for this minute, set chicken timer for this, and it keeps it all straight and your hands are messy, so you don't have to touch anything to set a timer. So there's so many casual uses for a voice computer.
And we're just getting started. That's the scary part, is that we are just on the initial cusp of using these things. They're actually starting to become truly useful now. But imagine 5 years, imagine 10 years from now where that'll be. It's kind of cool and kind of scary. It makes me want to be a plumber, because Alexa will never be able to do plumbing. I'm sorry. Well, I don't know. I guess if you use some robots and bots.
Oh gosh. No, yeah, the plumbing, man. Or well, I was about to say electrician, but electrician kind of can dovetail into electronics, which kind of, but yeah, the water, and then all the types of water, drinking water, gray water, black water. So AI, we should do a show on AI ops. That would, or no, is that the term that most people, I know that people still argue about various terms until they really catch on.
Yeah. And that one, the thing with AI ops is don't confuse it with DevOps. It's two kind of different things. It is meant to help streamline and simplify operations. So I guess in that sense, they're both the same. But
Well, when is it big enough to have its own buzzword?
yeah,
But
exactly. I'm waiting for the Dev AI Sec DBA Ops.
right. So in Azure Application Insights, what's really awesome, you can take any kind of custom telemetry, log messages, and just throw it into App Insights, and then query it all back out. And then when you find a query that's interesting, you set a threshold for it, configure it with an alarm, and then Azure can trigger all kinds of communication channels when that query gets a hit. Because invariably you would think, okay, under normal circumstances, my system is quiet. It's not throwing alerts all over the place, because if it is, we all know that you just filter them out and people ignore them because they're waste. So you want your system to be quiet when it's running well. So as we configure all these queries, that's, if we get a hit, oh, that's a problem. Everybody should know about it. Not just the person on call, but the whole development team.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you're listening and you're not in Azure, there are many other third-party products that do it that are just as mature. Datadog is one that I've been following for years. But putting that telemetry in and building it in early, so you never are surprised with a service ticket coming in that says the system is slow. You can preempt that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can answer that question: who's using what? And you can even do that with the feature flags as well. I was talking to Launch Darkly. Yeah. And that was an amazing thing, because they can actually show you, when that flag is getting triggered, true or false. Actually use that as a way to monitor how people are using your applications. And it's a great dashboard on it. And it's definitely one of those ones where you don't want to write your own. I have to kind of counsel against that here, because we'll say, oh, we'll just write our own simple feature flag thing. It's like, no, because once you go down that rabbit hole, you can't get out. And you'll keep like, okay, we'll just tweak it here and tweak it there and tweak it here and tweak it there. And a year and a half later, you've got this whole home build infrastructure thing.
Right.
It's again, buy versus build kind of decisions.
Right. And Azure is coming out with their feature flag service now. So I just saw an announcement. This past week that it's happening. So the movement is coming. I think Launch Darkly, was definitely one of the first movers, and it's a very mature product. But as a concept, the notion of separating a deployment from a release is a good one. And so now we need what the technical options are to make that happen, where we can actually do a software deployment, but if we want to, not actually release any new features,
right?
But just get them out there, get them ready.
Yep, and everybody knows that however long you're doing your sprints or your iterations or whatever, you can rarely get it done in one. There are usually some major features that's going to take multiple iterations to get done. So, how do you do it? Do you break them into smaller pieces? The feature flag will help you with that. And it'll also help you, again, I go with be able to deploy from main. Feature flags will help you get there too, because you can basically put a feature in that's not done and put it behind a flag. Mm-hmm. And it's the whole, comment it out and check it in, and then uncomment it out, or shelve it, or stash it, or this kind of thing. And that's just it becomes unmaintainable.
Right.
Now, the one thing you have to be careful with on feature flags, and make sure any feature flag system that you're thinking about using, is that it does track, the use, non-use, true, false, whatever, so you can find out when it's time to pull the flag out.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want
That's true.
1,000 feature flags, because that has its own technical debt that you don't want to get caught behind.
Right. Now that it's on for everybody, but it's still sitting there with an if statement that's always true.
Yes. At that point, Get that thing out of there, because you definitely don't want it. We were at the MVP Summit, and I was talking with Martin Woodward, and our company was rolling out a new data center in Dublin, and I said what a pain it was, because with GDPR, all the data has to be separate, and they can't commingle, and it was just a pain for us to get going with that. And Martin was kind of commiserated, says, "Yeah, we had the same kind of thing. We rolled out to a new data center, and we found 1,000 feature flags that nobody really knew anything about, and it was just a boondoggle until that all got taken care of."
Yeah, another category of technical debt.
Yes,
or some new path that the system could take. And we not only need the feature flag services, but we also need some really good feature flag patterns. For instance, if people start implementing feature flags throughout their application using if statements, then essentially we're creating more procedural programming load. Whereas the better approach is to use an object-oriented method for feature flags and either include or not include an additional object in the application. And so people are thinking about that. It's not only do I have a service that I can turn it on and off, but if I'm implementing an object-oriented system, then I need to implement an object-oriented feature flag pattern and not just put an if statement around a block of code, because that right there gets messy in a hurry.
And that is an extremely good point. I hadn't even thought of it that far, but yeah, that's can you imagine 1,000 if? I mean, that, because every line of code, you're right, is a future technical debt.
Well, in dependency management, we all know that we want to isolate and separate key dependencies, but a feature flag service, I mean, talk about a dependency where, what does it take for my application to function? Well, first thing, we need this dependency management service to be on. And so then literally from every layer in your application, if you have if statements that say, if some external dependency that doesn't reside in memory returns true, then, I mean, essentially you're breaking all encapsulation, forget about the solid principles. And so when thinking about the architecture of this, dependency management is still a concern, regardless, even if it's a new concept, some of the same old principles apply.
Right.
Well, hey, Greg, as folks are thinking about how to improve ops and DevOps, are there any resources that we should point our listeners to if they want to follow up on this a little bit more?
Well, one of the best ones that I found was Ed Thompson's weekly blog post that he does on devblogs.microsoft.com/DevOps. He does a top stories from the past week from the DevOps sphere. And even though I have a newsfeed addiction and subscribe to like a bazillion news feeds, he is still finding things that I'm not.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So his is definitely, and it's not long. He does basically snippets from posts, maybe 5 to 10, with little descriptions about it. But that's absolutely one. The other one is the DevOps Lab. Microsoft has a cool DevOps Lab that, Azure DevOps Labs.
AzureDevOpsLabs.com.
You got it. That is absolutely something to get started with, to go with. And honestly, there's a lot of resources available. It depends on what sphere you are living in, too. The Microsoft stuff is primarily focused, I would say, more on the developer side than the IT operations side, but they're moving more towards that direction. On the IT side, I actually don't know a lot of IT-focused DevOps resources.
Well, that's why Steve Ballmer went out on stage and said developers 37 times, right? It's no secret.
Yeah.
So, well, awesome. Well, thanks so much, Greg, for visiting with me. This was great.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
And until next week, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.